Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid, or Bot for short. Always say that at the start. So the thing I'm going to be talking about today in a couple of parts is my favourite American crime films. Quite a tricky one, this, because the crime genre, we could include lots of different elements like, police films, serial killers, involving the FBI, things like that. But all the films I've picked today are kind of include mostly elements of organised crime, and there's a little bit of kind of bank robbers as well. But I've tried to keep it in a narrow sphere, as it were. So some of the films that missed the cut, I mean, obviously I had to consider the classic James Cagney films, of which there's several. There's The Public Enemy from 1931, Angels with Dirty Faces 1938, Roaring Twenties 1939, and then White Heat 1949. The last two are directed by Raoul Walsh. The other two is Michael Curtiz and William A. Wellman, two great studio filmmakers. I think White Heat's the top one from this. It's got a couple, numerous, 2 or 3 really classic scenes, and James Cagney plays a real psychopath. But didn't quite make the cut. Very influential, obviously, the James Cagney depiction of, crazy criminal. It's just so innovative. There wouldn't be any kind of Joe Pesci and, characters like that in films, the mad guy in a film, in a crime film, if it wasn't for, the great James Cagney. And like I say, the studio filmmakers at that time are really great craftsmen, and those films are a real tribute to the studio system. And a couple other ones from around that time, kind of similar, not similar, but they've both got Sterling Hayden in. Obviously, you've got your heist film, The Asphalt Jungle, which is very influential, John Huston. This has the kind of criminal mastermind guy coming out of prison, and they want to crack a safe, and it shows all putting the crew together, and their different professional disciplines, which is very influential on other crime films. You would have like David Mamet's Heist, stuff like that. So that was like another consideration. And then obviously, as I mentioned, Sterling Hayden, obviously he's in The Killing, which Stanley Kubrick's third film, has big influence on Reservoir Dogs with its flashback time structure. And that's kind of heist gone wrong film. It's really, really good. And that also brings us to Tarantino. Obviously, you've got Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction's great. Jackie Brown as well. Those are under consideration. I like Tarantino. I've kind of said it in other things. I just prefer kind of people reflect real life. Tarantino's films, all about the films he's watched and pop culture that he experiences. It's not a reflection of reality, where these films tend to, be trying to be more of a reflection of reality. Then the other couple of choices, Scorsese, Casino, which I think's improved with age. It's kind of Goodfellas Part 2 a bit, but it looks stunning. Sharon Stone's great, and James Woods. And The Irishman recently, some people knocked it, but it was great to see it. It was great to see Pacino and De Niro back, not completely top draw like Casino, but I still really enjoyed it. So those are some of the films in consideration. But the first 3 I'm going to pick, and have cheated on this top 10, which you'll see, is actually, it'll come to it. But the first 3 films I'm going to pick really look at the real bottom end of the food chain. So the first one I'm going to pick is Donnie Brasco from 1997. So directed by an Englishman, Mike Newell, and featuring Johnny Depp and Al Pacino. Probably Johnny Depp's first kind of mature performance in this. But Pacino's a standout for me. It's a really underrated Pacino performance. He plays like a hoodlum. But he's the guy who goes around the shopkeeper picking up protection money, or, go and, raid these slot machines, go and do these parking meters. He's right down the bottom end of the chain. These are the guys who are not even like Goodfellas. They don't live well at all. They live in, municipal housing. I've seen Pacino in his tracky bottoms. There's a great scene at the end where he thinks he's been betrayed by, or he's questioning whether he's been betrayed by Johnny Depp's character. And he's got a leather coat on, he's kind of sat in a leather-seated car, plastic-seated car, and you can hear the squeak of his jacket, and it's almost adding tension to it. It's quite tragic, Pacino's character. But, you know, Pacino, there's always an argument with Pacino, De Niro. I think Pacino had a better later period from, you know, if you think about 1989 was kind of a turning point. Bobby started doing more films to fund Tribeca. Pacino came back with Sea of Love after a lull and, you know, making a Revolution film, which was a flop. But, you know, they've both done some bad films and bad performances. But I think Pacino, if you actually look, he's kind of popped up in other stuff. So my next choice is, only watched this again recently, but I was like, actually, this is really good. This is proper, it's properly grimy. It's kind of depressing. I think, if I'm correct, it's set in Boston. But it's the Friends of Eddie Coyle. So this is a real cult film from 1973, directed by Peter Yates, who did Bullet. And it stars Robert Mitchum, probably in his last great role. He plays Eddie Coyle. He's just down on his luck, really low-level criminal, and he's got like a case pending in another state, and he's getting the squeeze put on him by a cop for intel, basically played by Richard Jordan, really cool American actor. And it's basically how he gets played, but it's just, you know, he goes to is it a basketball game? No, not basketball, baseball game. Later on in the film, you know, it's got scenes just around that area where it's shot. You know, you'll see him in a bar, a bit drunk, but everything's just so low key. It's so kind of grimy and it's, like I say, depressing, and it just captures that really well. It's not an upbeat film, but it's worth checking out. A real sort of cult film. I was just thinking film recently I saw that kind of had that low down thing was The Drop with Tom Hardy and one of James Gandolfini's last roles. Again, it's quite good, that one. Sort of capturing, you know, the barfly life. Number 8, so this is kind of got a robbers element to it, but it's got that organised crime element. Because basically it's Charlie Varick, Don Siegel's 1973 film, again, not a box office hit. But Walter Matthau plays like a bank robber. He robs some money with his crew. His girlfriend gets killed in the ensuing kind of shootout. He's got a partner in it, Andy Robertson. Obviously, he played the Scorpio Killer in Don Siegel's Dirty Harry. So basically, they discover that they've actually taken money from a bank that is a front mob money, and then the mob send out an enforcer to track it down, played brilliantly by Don Baker. The name of his character escapes me, but it's like a female name he's got. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it just looks at low-level crime things. He has to go and get a different ID. You know, he goes to see someone, Walter Matthau's character. It's just really well done. It's got a great climax, a really cool sort of action bit. But again, it's just that thing where these characters, you know, this isn't operating at the big level, it's the lower level. Okay, so that's my number 7 choice. Number 8, apologies. Number 7, classic, the first new Hollywood film, one of the most influential films of all time, Bonnie and Clyde, 1967. So again, you've got bank robbers, Bonnie and Clyde, Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, basically playing real life characters. No organised crime in this, just a bit of the cops, but it's the focus is on them and then putting together their crew, which features Gene Hackman in his first Oscar-nominated performances, Buck Barrel, I think it's Estelle Parsons, I think she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, and I had Michael J. Pollard in as well. A couple of years later, he'd been Hannibal Brooks, one of my favourite war films. Obviously, it's a great film, got amazing climax with the slow motion deaths of Bonnie and Clyde, which is predates the Wild Bunch by a couple of years. But what this captures really well is, like, you know, the Depression era superbly, and that thing where they're just kind of thrown together and kind of bring out the best and worst in each other. And this has been copied. I suppose you'd have a film like Gun Crazy from the 1950s, you know, where you got the couple on the run, but you know, later on, you got a film like Natural Born Killers, obviously owes a debt to Bonnie and Clyde, things like that. Yeah, and again as well, because it's set in the 1930s, it's touching base with those, you know, the James Cagney films, you know, the Tommy Guns and stuff. Scarface as well, the original Scarface. So yeah, that's my number 7 choice. Number 6 is one of my favourite, another Al Pacino film. This guy's going to make a lot of appearances. It's Carlito's Way, 1993. So I think this is, I watched this again recently. I think it's kind of more of a tragic love story, really. Not all of it totally rings true. Some of us think the 70s-ness of it isn't quite nailed. But when I was watching it again is the sheer star wattage of Pacino's performance. You know, he just literally lights up the screen. He's so cool in this. And he's got a couple of incredible set pieces by Brian De Palma. And Brian De Palma, when he's a funny director, Brian De Palma. There's kind of 3 De Palmas. There's kind of De Palma, what are you doing? What's going on here? Mission to Mars, you know, stuff like that. And then you've got kind of second string De Palma where he's kind of been playful. Raising Cain, Dressed to Kill, but a bit strange, maybe Snake Eyes, I don't know. And then there's Top Drawer De Palma. There's about 5 or 6 films, and this is one of them. Sean Penn gives an amazing performance as his lawyer, Clyde felt. He should have had an Oscar nomination for that. He should have been better recognised, this film. But I do think it's a little flawed. Could maybe be trimmed a bit, the editing, you know, because it's a bit long. But just great photography. The 2 set pieces, the one where he takes his cousin, quite by accident, just to paid some money for some drugs, I think. And then he's got you know, he's doing. He realised something's going down, and he's doing a pool game. He does a trick shot. There's an amazing bit where you know, you see the reflection of the killer come across another guy's sunglasses. You know, it's pure De Palma magnificence. Then the climax is a chase sequence that starts at a nightclub. And when he arrives at Grand Central Station, there's a 3-minute Steadicam take. Not one of De Palma's longer ones, but the choreography of it's superb, what it accomplishes. But you don't actually realise it's happening because you're so sort of involved in the action. Sometimes I wish it didn't have the framing device that would make the climax all the more kind of shit in a way, because you know what's going to happen. Whereas, you know, if you did not know what was going to happen. Yeah, it's still really cool. You know, he's looking at Puerto Rican gangsters. Yeah, it's you know, a top film of the 90s and holds up really well. So number 5 is Sergio Leone's 1984-83 masterpiece. Was it premiered in late 83, I think. Once Upon a Time in America. So this was famously, you know, got totally fated at Cannes. You know, it's amazing. And then the studio cut it, released it in America, made it incomprehensible. So you had this situation where the studio cut made some of the year's 10 worst lists, and this Leone cut made the 10 best list. I first saw this, I think I read in Kerrang magazine, it was like a little interview with Axl Rose, and he said that this was his favourite film. And it's in the video shop. I'm not as an Axl Rose fan, but I dug it out, and I enjoyed it, but found it quite sort of hard, you know, to grasp. But it was the long cut. It was probably the longest film I ever watched at that point. This would have been when I was about 15, 16, and went to my local video shop. And then down the years, a few years later, I watched it again, and then I got it. My mate had a good print on video that I borrowed. And I watched it again recently. One interesting thing about the photography on this, it's got quite desaturated tones on it, and what they did with that is that when they were developing the film, they leave a bit of silver in the nitrate or something like that. I think they call it the re-silvering process. I'm not sure. It got really popular after the film Seven. If you look at mid-90s, late 90s films, a lot of desaturated colour. This is before you could do it digitally. But anyway, this actually has that technique. Obviously, the controversial thing, I think, which really lets it down is what I say is the betrayal of the De Niro character. So there's a rape scene where he's with Elizabeth McGovern's character. I think it's played by Elizabeth McGovern. And he rapes her, and then, you know, they're supposed to be on a date, and you know, it's just that kind of, I don't know why, you know, Leone, this is one of the flaws sometimes of directors of the era, male directors are misogyny. And I was watching it with my wife. She hadn't seen it before. She was enjoying the film, but after that point she felt she couldn't sympathise with De Niro's character as much. But that side, it is, you know, there's a lot of ways you can read this film. Is everything happening, or is it just in De Niro's head? Is he just, you know, smoking in the opium den? James Woods is great. I think the bits that work best is when you got the young kids in the building up in New York. There's those great shots by the Brooklyn Bridge, and when the young kid gets killed is really poignant. Amazing Ennio Morricone score. Probably a film just far too complex. Now we have like more complex flashback narratives. Just too complex for its time, I think, in some ways. So that's my number 5. With these, I usually do my top 3 separate, so we'll do number 4 now, and that'll be part 2, and it's Scarface, so Pacino again. Again, I saw this film back about 87, wasn't that into it, but I watched it again. Every time I watched it, it just got better. I just think it's an amazing film. The 80s-ness of it, although it dates it, it just becomes this great period piece. But I think it captures the crassness of American capitalism brilliantly. Tony Montana, there's a classic bit which mirrors the original 1931 Scarface, "The World Is Yours," and it's so tacky, his mansion. The fact that a lot of people kind of aspire to that, Russian oligarchs and that kind of tacky expense. It's got great performance. Obviously, Pacino just goes out on 10, but it's a brilliant 10. Michelle Pfeiffer, probably a breakout role as a serious actress. Robert Lodge's great. Frank, brilliant. F. Murray Abraham. I forget the name of the actor playing the Colombian drug lord. There's that classic scene. He rings Tony. There's the guy who plays the assassin in Look What You Know, You Stupid Fuck, when no women, no kids, that bit. That's played by the guy who plays Hector Salamanca in Breaking Bad, I think. So there's lots of gems in this. Stephen Bauer's great. Mary Elizabeth Master Antonio. De Palma's great. He's actually not as flashy in this. There is that kind of camera take where the chainsaw bit where the camera kind of cranes up. And I think it kind of moves around a bit, or kind of moves out of the window. I can't quite remember. But he doesn't have any of his kind of split screen, slow motion, montage bits. What's the other bit I really love about it? Yeah, it's the push to the limit bit with the music. So it's got the song Push to the Limit. It's totally cheesy, but I just love that montage. Again, mirroring the great montages of the 1930s gangster films. So the Warner Brothers, I should mention that Warner Brothers made all those James Cagney films. And they had editors who would do the montages for them, for the newspapers, roll bits and, various things that cut together. And like Scarface mimics that with that scene. There's a hilarious bit where you see him come up to the bank manager guy with all the money and he kind of smiles dead happy because he's got all this money to launder. So that's my a film that improves with age. That could go up. That's a film that could go up the food chain. But Pacino is the crime master here. Okay, so I'll see you for part 2. Cheers.